Welcome everyone for today's video from Uzbekistan Chess Cup Masters 2025. We have today a great game between Arjun Erigaisi and Nodirbek Abdusattorov. We start with e4 played by Arjun Erigaisi, and he start to adjust his pieces. India number 1 against Uzbekistan number 1. Abdusattorov played e5. Knight f3 by Arjun Erigaisi. Knight c6. Bishop b5. We have Spanish game. And knight f6. Now the variation is Berlin defense. Very solid variation. d3 anti-Berlin variation. And we have bishop c5, and this pawn cannot be taken by Arjun because after bishop takes knight, knight take pawn on d5, then black have queen d4, and he winning the pawn back. Castled by Abdusattorov and castled by Arjun Erigaisi, and we have rook e8 by Abdusattorov. Bishop g5 by Arjun, pinning the knight. h6 by Abdusattorov, kicking the bishop. Where to go? Bishop to h4. And we have bishop e7, brought his bishop back. Bishop g3 by Arjun. d6 by Abdusattorov. And h3 by Arjun. Till now nothing new, normal variation. Bishop d7 by Abdusattorov. Knight b d2. Knight h5, attacking the bishop on g3. Bishop h2, and now this knight on h5 is unstable because anytime Arjun can remove his knight on f3, and then the knight is hanging by the queen, white queen. We have bishop g5, knight takes bishop, and he must take by the queen. Queen take back. And we have knight f3. Queen f6 by Abdusattorov. Rook e1. Arjun supported his pawn on e4, aiming to play d4. Sorry. a6, kicking the bishop. Bishop came back to c4, still position equal. Knight came to the f4, and now all the black pieces attacking the king side. So we have d4 on the board. Typical idea on Spanish game. Rook A on d8, continue his development, and now we have bishop takes knight on f4, and he take back with the queen. Offering queen trade from c1. Refuse, and queen came back to f6. Now there is threat. One tactic, the bishop on d7, he can take the pawn on h3, then take the knight with the queen. Now white played queen e3, and we have knight came to e7. Typical idea to go to g6, then to f4. We have bishop came back to f1, supporting the king side. Abdusattorov continue the same idea. He moved his knight to g6, and he is aiming to put his knight on f4. We have king h2 by Arjun, supporting his pawn on h3. Pawn e takes now d4, removing the tension from the center, and Arjun take back by pawn on c3. c5 by Abdusattorov. And we have queen d2 by Erigaisi. Removing his queen from the e5 because there is rook on the e8. Now we have bishop came to c6, attacking the pawn on e4 by two pieces now. So Arjun played d5, kicking the bishop, and we have bishop b5, exchange bishop takes bishop, and pawn takes bishop back, and we have a3 by Arjun Erigaisi, and the position still equal. Rook a8. Rook e3 by Arjun Erigaisi, and now black can play b4. This pawn cannot take because the rook is hanging on a1. So what's the move? He removed the rook. He play rook a on e1. Double rook on e5. Pawn takes pawn on a3. And now Erigaisi took with the rook. Rook takes rook on a3, and pawn take rook back, and the position equal. Maybe slight, the black is slight, his position slight better because of the pawn here. They have majority pawns on queen side. Maybe one pawn will be best. when passed pawn, it will be dangerous. Now we have a queen e3, and we have queen came to b2. Now we want to attack the pawn on e3. If he bring rook, then double attack on e3. We have rook e2, good move, protecting the f2 pawn, and kicking the queen. Queen went to b1. And knight came back to d2, kicking the queen. So Abdusattorov moving his queen to a1. Rook e1, again kicking the queen. Queen came back to e5 with check. We have g3 by Arjun Erigaisi, and the queen came back to b2. Same idea for Abdusattorov. He want to play b4, and then when he has passed pawn, he will win the game if he can protect the pawn. So Arjun play rook to b1. Queen came to c2, and now he can take the pawn. Rook takes pawn on b5. And Abdusattorov play c4 now. We have king to g2. Good move to protect the pawn on f2. He can remove the knight anytime. Now we have c3 by Abdusattorov. And knight came back to f3 by Erigaisi. Rook c8, protecting his best pawn. And we have queen came back to e1, supporting the b1 square. He want to bring his rook back to put his rook on c1 in front of the pawn, and the position again equal. Queen on d3, and now preparing to play c2. Arjun continue his idea. He bring his rook to b1, and the next move he will put his rook on c1. We have c2 on the board. And Arjun move his rook to c1. Queen takes pawn on a3. And we have queen d2 by Arjun Erigaisi. Queen a4 by Abdusattorov, queen e2 by Erigaisi, and we have rook c4, attacking the pawn on e4, queen d2, Abdusattorov came back with his rook to c5, because if he takes the pawn on e4, then he will lose his pawn on c2. Now we have queen e2 again, and again repeated the move, rook c4, queen d2, and Abdusattorov changed. He played f6, and then Arjun can bring his knight to e1. Now the pawn, he can take the pawn on c2, and he left the pawn on e4. So Abdusattorov took the pawn on e4, and Arjun Erigaisi took with his knight, because he cannot take with the rook. Then there is one tactic, rook takes knight, and then queen takes the rook. So he took with the knight, and we have rook on c4, and the knight came back to e3, rook takes rook, queen takes rook, and the position is drawish. Queen e4 with check, king g1, knight came to e5, he planning to check from f3. We have queens on c8 check, and if he came with the queen to h7, then Arjun can exchange queen f5 with check, we can exchange the queen. But he came to f7, and we have check from e6, and the king came to g6. Arjun took the pawn on d6. Now Abdusattorov, he have to take the draw. He check from f3 with the knight, king came to g2. There is dangerous discover or not? No dangerous discover. Knight to g5 with check, king came to h2, knight check again from f3, and king came to g2, knight check from g5. I think there is draw, and king came to h2. Again repeated the move 3 times, and finally they agree for the draw. Very nice game by these two great players. Thank you for watching. Don't forget like, subscribe and share. See you next game. Goodbye.